Visual art is often treated as pure intuition, but at a technical level, it functions as an engineered system. It is a configuration of specific, interactable variables designed to influence human perception. The baseline of this system is the two-dimensional plane. By drawing a border, we establish the frame, defining the physical boundaries of the usable space. This frame isolates the design from external chaos. While the space outside remains disorganized, the space inside the border acquires an immediate, implicit order. This framed space allows for hierarchical navigation. A designer builds a specific track for the eye, directing the viewer to process information in an exact, intended sequence. Mastering this taxonomy of rules is the only reliable method to construct three-dimensional illusions and control psychological responses on a completely flat surface. The foundational unit of this system is the line. Straight, classic marks establish structural stability. A horizontal line across the frame, reinforced by a vertical pillar, creates the rigid X and Y axes of the composition. Expressive lines imply motion, guiding viewers. Line directions trigger responses. Horizontals calm, verticals command strength, while jagged spikes generate anxiety. Connecting end to end, a line upgrades into a two-dimensional shape. This creates a symbiotic relationship. Positive space, the subject, is defined by the surrounding void. These foundational marks dictate the viewer's baseline emotional state, while simultaneously partitioning the canvas into actionable territories. Human vision evolved to prioritize luminance over hue. Because we detect light and shadow before we identify color, value serves as the primary element for establishing structure and presence. Value refers to the relative lightness or darkness of an element. This grayscale spectrum isolates high-key whites from low-key blacks. Applying a directional gradient, or shading, simulates height, width, and depth. This transitions a flat, two-dimensional shape into a volumetric form. Placing high-contrast values in immediate proximity creates the appearance of mass. This mimics the way light interacts with physical objects in a realistic environment. Mastering tonal value allows a designer to manipulate the specific light signals our eyes prioritize. This renders a flat plane as a heavy, physical object. Color theory is rooted in the physical refraction of white light. When light strikes a prism, it splinters into the visible spectrum: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and violet. We reproduce these wavelengths through different systems. This additive system mixes red, green, and blue light for screens. Conversely, print relies on subtractive pigments, cyan, magenta, and yellow, to absorb light. Every color is defined by its hue, chroma, and value. Its temperature, whether warm or cool, directly influences whether the viewer feels stimulated or relaxed. Visual texture is an optical illusion created through the manipulation of line and color. It mimics tactile surfaces like stone or fabric on a perfectly smooth plane. While value provides the raw illusion of mass, color and texture function as modifiers. They provide the specific material reality and psychological mood for these forms. Elements like line and color must be organized through compositional principles. Without this syntax, an image collapses into visual noise. Rhythm is established through repetition with variation. This creates an implicit order that guides the eye across the canvas. We dictate focus by breaking that rhythm. Scaling an element or shifting its proportion creates a point of dominance, establishing a clear visual hierarchy. Unity and balance keep these contrasting elements in equilibrium. They act as the invisible anchors that prevent the composition from feeling fragmented. These organizational principles transform raw visual data into a readable message. Without them, even perfectly rendered forms lack clarity. Linear perspective provides the geometric framework necessary to simulate deep space on a two-dimensional surface. It functions through the vanishing point. Parallel lines drawn across the field must converge at a single coordinate on the horizon. This mathematical convergence is visible in real-world architecture. The lines of this cobblestone street trace directly to a vanishing point at the mountain's base. Aerial perspective accounts for atmospheric distance. As objects recede, the air degrades detail, lowering contrast and color saturation. Perspective systems utilize rigorous geometry to compress miles of perceived spatial depth into a plane only millimeters thick. Because light enters the eye conically, Projecting a three-dimensional world onto a flat plane requires specific calculated distortions. Foreshortening occurs when an object is angled toward the viewer. Its length appears visually compressed, collapsing its perceived volume into a fraction of its true scale. Photographic lenses and mechanical systems are built to manage these projections. The physical hardware determines how space is warped or captured. These systems introduce optical anomalies. Barrel distortion bows the image outward spherically, while pincushion distortion pulls the edges inward toward the center. Perfect three-dimensional representation on a flat surface is a physical impossibility. Realistic art is the mastery of controlled, acceptable distortions. We have moved from simple lines to enclosed shapes, shading them into volumetric forms, and projecting them into deep space through geometric perspective. Stripping away the lighting and depth reveals the core reality. This environment is a planar projection. It is a flat, geometric model. In the context of perceptual art, these constructions function as precise reflections of how human biology translates sensory data into a coherent environment. Knowing this visual grammar is the factor that separates accidental markings from deliberate, powerful communication. Mastery of the frame, the elements of form, and the geometry of perspective grants the ability to engineer entirely new realities within the borders of a